Hello and welcome to episode 136 of the Rocco and Slippy Show. Today is March 18th, 2019. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both from McFlugel.com. Show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/136, where you'll be able to find links to the things we talk about, as well as ways to subscribe to the podcast and keep up with us on social media and everywhere else. And also to check out libertymugs.com. Where we sell libertarian-themed mugs and T-shirts. And I got an email this week that the CIA is threatening to arrest me if I don't send them $10,000 in Bitcoin by sometime in April. So I really need everyone to buy a lot of mugs right now, so I have enough money to send to, I think his name was Roland from the CIA. If you go on the Liberty, did you see that, Slappy?
No.
Oh, so if you go on the Liberty Mugs Twitter account, it's a recent post. I screenshotted the email I got. So Roland from the CIA is said that there's some very. I'm being accused of being of some very, very terrible things.
Well, the CIA is involved. I mean, you know what they do. So I would get that money to them, and in order to do that, people need to buy mugs.
Yeah, he wants 2.5 Bitcoin.
Really?
And they will wipe the charges from me. So
well, we should be able to get that by tomorrow if our people all buy. If everyone just buys 10 mugs.
Yeah, 10 of those $100 mugs.
Mugs, yeah. I mean, that's all we need to sell. So.
Wait, no. Wait.
You need more than that. How many?
1,000.
1,000 of them?
No, 100. 100 of those $100 mugs. Well, actually more, because we don't just get all the profit right away. I mean, there is a margin.
True. So buy lots of them. Just buy as many as you want, as you can.
You know what? If each person buys 100. Then I think we'll be safe. 100 of the $100 mugs, I think we'll be good. So,
in fact, if you buy 100 of the $100 mugs, we'll give you a free one of your choice.
Well, the deal right now, I think, is that we'll give you, I don't know what that is.
We'll add one in, whatever it is. We'll add one in.
Yeah, if you buy 100 of the $100 mugs, we can't do too much because I still got to make sure I have $10,000 that I can send.
True.
Which is interesting because he said exactly $10,000, but he wants it in Bitcoin. And he says it's about 2.5 Bitcoin. But what happens if I have enough Bitcoin that is exactly $10,000 worth, and then the price changes as soon as I send it? And now,
will he give you a refund?
Well, if the price appreciates, then I hope he would give me a little bit of a refund. But what if the price drops and now it's only more mugs? Well, I mean, and the time's up, so now he only has $9,999.
What are you doing? Going to jail, or what's? I guess killing you?
No, I'm going to jail.
Oh,
so
well, let's talk about jury nullification.
Yeah. I'm not sure you would want to nullify this one though.
All right.
So yeah, all right. Slappy, you want to introduce our episode topic for us?
Sure. So what was it? Over the weekend, last week, a politician in New Zealand got an egg thrown at them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of a reaction, and then we got a little discussion about punishment and what's acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're going to talk about the death penalty. But describe that video for me.
Okay, so this will be linked in the show notes page. A little backstory just to.
This is the guy who put out that statement.
Yeah, and I saw this statement like before this egg incident happened.
Yeah,
this guy was known. So it was after the Christchurch shooting
in New Zealand.
Fraser Anning, who was an Australian senator, wrote this press release saying that it was really terrible what happened and it was disgusting and blah blah blah. And then he just kind of said
But this is what happens when people come over,
right?
Whatever.
And kind of just painting a very broad brush about Muslims. And when I read that, I was like, oh man, this guy is just an awful person for saying this. Really just really It's unbelievable that actually someone would write that. So, well, we don't really need to get into the details of that, but just understand. And I'm sure most people already know all about this, but for the sake of discussion, all you need to know is that the vast majority of people out there that think that Fraser Anning is just a jerk and not a nice guy at all. And so what happened? He was at somewhere where there's a lot of media there recording it, and there's this 15-year-old kid standing next to him, and he smashed an egg on his head, and he recorded himself doing it. And so Anning turned around and smacked the kid in the face, like with like an open slap on the face, and then they kind of like stared at each other for a half a second. Then he tried to go after him again. People pulled Anning away, and like 2 or 3 guys jumped on top of the kid to secure him. I heard some people were calling to get the police there. So, but I think it's a good way, because in recent episodes we've been talking about how to deal with crime and criminals in a libertarian society, and talking about alternatives to prison. But I don't really think we talked about how you deal with a crime as it's happening. So I think this is a good example of seeing some. We got to see the whole situation here, from the assault of the egg, and that was assault. I mean, it's not that big of a deal to get an egg smacked on your head, all things considered, and that's apparently all this kid wanted to do. But I mean, you're still putting your hands, using quote unquote a weapon on someone. So he did violate Anning's rights.
That would piss me off. Someone at work sprayed perfume on me. I wanted to punch the guy, but I didn't.
Yeah, did you smell better afterwards?
Maybe. Smelled like an old lady.
Well, maybe you smelled bad and you were violating his property rights by sending your stench. Maybe. So that's a good case study. But no, it's like this kid did violate the non-aggression principle. Let's talk in very libertarian terms.
Right.
You may not like Anning, and you may not think it's a big deal with what he did, but you can't go around smashing eggs on people's heads. So a lot of discussion happened about, did Anning, was he justified in turning around and smacking the kid? And then afterwards, were the people justified in kind of tackling him and restraining him, holding him down? And it's what I think is really good about this is that since the police weren't involved, at least not right away, they did eventually come, and I think they arrested him, but then released him without charging him with anything. But it's a good example of just private individuals reacting to a situation and seeing the whole recording, and it's getting a lot of attention and a lot of critiques, which I think is good, because like what we're talking about in the previous episodes about dealing with crimes is that we would be having, private police forces or defense organizations would be doing this, and they would be subject to review by other people. And if they handled a situation poorly, then they're going to face backlash for it. So they're going to be very careful and make sure that their people are trained very well. So let's kind of step through it and talk about just some thoughts about this, because it's going around things. So I think we all can agree that it was a crime to smack an egg,
throw the egg at someone's head.
Yeah. Right. And it wasn't just a throw. He took the egg and with his hand smashed it on his head.
Yeah, I mean, he was right behind the guy. It's not like,
right. Yeah. And it was fairly forcefully. Like, it wasn't like he wasn't trying to make sure he didn't get any eggshell in the guy's hair.
Yeah,
just a clean little tap. He hit him pretty forcefully. So people were responding saying that like, well, he shouldn't have smacked him because it was just an egg after all. So what do you think about that?
Well, I did get an egg thrown at me before. And I was in 2nd grade, and I ran home. So
Wow.
was that correct, or should I have?
Was it a
Should I have
raw
taken
egg?
it?
Was it hard boiled, soft
Yeah, it was
boiled?
raw. I got it
Okay.
all over me, man.
Oh
I was
no.
upset. I was a second grader. Kids were older, but anyway, I don't know. I don't know what I do in that situation. If I'm a politician, I'm reading a statement, I'm in front of camera. Like he was speaking or doing so. I mean, he wasn't like at a podium, but he was speaking to the press or something, wasn't he?
Yep.
And then you get hit with an egg. I don't know what my reaction would be. Is it justified what his was?
I don't know. Well, here's my thing. Here's my take on this. Not too hot because I don't want to cook the egg. But so he got hit on the back of the head with an egg. So he's not looking. He didn't see it coming.
He didn't see it coming. He had no idea.
He knows
he just got hit.
Someone hit him on the back of the head, and there's liquid on him.
Yeah, pouring down his back or whatever. I mean, you can feel it.
In that split second, like he doesn't know what happened. He turned around, and it's obvious who did it, and he retaliated. I mean, I think it's normal for a person when you get struck. You know, we could talk about turning the other cheek, and you know that's not a bad. If he didn't react, if he just turned around and retreated,
did nothing, it would have been okay,
right? But he doesn't know. He's not understanding what's happening. You know.
The other thing too to keep in mind, he did put out a statement that was very controversial.
Right. So he's
maybe on edge. Doesn't know what's happening. Doesn't know, you know.
He's clearly a target because he just did get targeted, although it's not a big deal. But
an egg and not with
right.
But he doesn't know.
Right. You don't know what's happening. So it's not unreasonable to retaliate in order to prevent the next wave of attack from happening because you don't know what's going on. And when you do what this kid did and you attack someone like that, you kind of forfeit a little bit of I don't want to say your rights, but you forfeit your ability to complain about your target escalating it. You know, it should be reasonable. And here's the thing, it's happening all so quickly. You know, what happens if he pulls a gun out and shoots him? I mean, it's a completely different conversation. We'd be framing it in a much different way, but I don't think it's unreasonable to throw a punch back. And he didn't even throw a punch. It was an open-handed slap. So, you know, until you can determine what's going on, you know, I think there should be some leeway given there.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Do you have anything else on what Anning did? Because after that slap and after he tried to kind of engage him again, you could, I don't know.
So I haven't actually seen the full video. I saw the kid. I saw a clip on Twitter where it shows the kid throwing the egg. I didn't see his reaction at all. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it happened. Like I said, I don't know what I do in that position. You know, I was a bouncer at a bar and fights have broken out and you're on edge and you're looking and you're defending yourself. And if you get hit, you know, you turn around. Now that's different when you're in the middle of a fight versus saying a speech. It's hard to say what I would do. Based on what you're telling me that happened, I don't think it's that out of line.
No, I don't think it was either. I mean, I don't like violent solutions, but
right.
I mean,
but people will defend themselves in different ways, whatever they feel is necessary for defense.
Yeah.
You know, which could kind of bring us into our next thing too.
Well, there's another thing to this because there's another aspect to it that I want to talk about, which I think is the more interesting part of this story is that 2 or 3 guys jumped on top of the kid after this. Some people pulled Anning away, and 2 or 3 guys jumped on top of him, and they had him in like I don't know if it was a headlock, but they were like laying on top of him. I think someone kicked the kid. The one kick I saw was like a very light, very, very, very light kick. But it leads to the, you know, were these guys doing it to try to be, you know, the tough guys at this point? I think it's reasonable to tackle someone, especially a politician, or yeah, sound like I'm saying politicians deserve something, but given this situation, if you see someone under attack that you like, it's like you were saying before, he's on edge. So I think it's reasonable for someone, bystanders there, to tackle the kid to make sure that he's not ready to do something else. Laying on top of the kid and kind of have him in a hold for a while when he's clear. Because I heard them kind of saying stuff like, you throw an egg at someone, this is what you get for doing that. And it's like, all right, if they understood that the kid was just trying to smack the guy and with an egg,
yeah,
then I don't think you need the full body weight of 2 or 3 adult men on top of them, because we would look at the police doing something like that and saying like, well, this is excessive. This looks like it's excessive force.
Yeah, definitely. Although, yeah, I agree. It's like I think of my bouncing years, where your job is to protect certain people,
right?
And I mean, if it takes 3 guys to lay on someone, or if even if it doesn't, it's almost like you don't want to be the guy standing around watching.
Right. I don't want to. I wasn't there. I don't.
Yeah, I don't know. And
but that's where I think it's good. I think this conversation around what should be done there is a good thing, because if we are to ever transition into a society that has private protection, then these are the things that are going to have to get decided. We don't have police that are generally immune to doing whatever they want. And in situations like this, most people's reaction was, well, if you don't want to deal with the consequences, don't break the law. Well, criminals do have rights, and this kid even has rights after committing this crime. So they still need to be respected. So there's this line that has to kind of get walked. And I think it's good that there's a discussion, and it's been a fairly, even among normies, I think it's been a fairly reasonable discussion that I've seen. I'm sure there's all sorts of flame throwing with some people, but from what I've seen, it's been a reasonable discussion by people saying like, well, maybe you didn't need 3 guys on top of them. Maybe after a couple,
once the situation is diffused,
right? Once it's de-escalated,
like I said too, I just want to reiterate, I didn't see this part of the video. I don't know what happened. Did the kid just give up and he's laying there and they're like on top of him?
Well, it's kind of tough to see that in the video because is he done, or is he done, or just he can't move?
Right.
So,
because if the threat's done, then it's like, all right, the threat's done.
Right. And especially if you can determine that the only threat was an egg, then all right,
initially, yeah. Once you kind of diffuse the situation and people give up, you're like, all right, let's get up, whatever, handle it from there. There's no reason for more violence, the vengeance part.
Right. So I don't know. You want to talk about transition smoothly right into the death penalty?
Death penalty. Yeah, sure. Well, where we got this idea from was an article that was sent to me from a website called First Things. It's talking about capital punishment. The title of the article is Capital Punishment and the Sex Abuse Crisis, and that's referring to the Catholic Church. Where do you want to get? It's a fairly, it's not that long, but it would take us a while to read all this, so I don't want to do that. We actually both read this and had a different idea of even what it was about. So I don't know where you want to start with this.
I don't know. I don't even know that we need to talk really too much about the article, but
there was some interesting points in it, though.
Yeah, it's linked in the show notes page, but I think it's got kind of the main idea. And right in the first paragraph, right in the middle of it, the author says, "What I want to say on the matter falls under 3 headlines: separation, vengeance, and protection." And I think that kind of is a good jumping off point to talk about how to deal with criminals, like what should be things to consider, especially when you want to talk about the death penalty, because it kind of gets, I don't, is it debate is the death penalty really debated much in libertarian circles?
I don't think so.
I know when people talk about like
I mean, certainly when the state carries it out,
right? But I've seen people talk about executing pedophiles, libertarians,
True.
and I think that's, you know, even as horrible of a crime as that, I don't think it justifies you know, ending someone's life. So yeah, I think we can just talk about these kind of three topics. Maybe if he has a good point, we can kind of tie in what he says about it. Well, but like
that sentence you just read, the very next one I thought was decent. It says, all of these serve to distinguish justice, which the church should uphold, from mere regulatory compliance, which seems the main thing on offer right now from our bishops.
Yeah, actually, I kind of missed that when I read that first, and that's actually a really good line.
Yeah,
because that does bug me about the Catholic Church a little bit. I remember I wrote an article a while back about I forget what it was. What was it? A priest was accused of committing some crime, and they were just like turned it over. They didn't want to have like an investigation in the church to deal with it, and they just like handed it right over to the government. And it's like, well, no, the church should deal with this stuff.
Right.
But so yeah, separation. So obviously the death penalty like completely separates you from existence.
Yes, you're completely separated from all society.
Right.
No. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that part, and that the author makes this point, and I agree with it, that when you do commit a crime, the act of crime is kind of an antisocial thing, and so you separate yourself from society.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to deal with those the consequences of that. So and he draws the example of, you know, if a kid misbehaves at the dinner table, then he gets sent to his room, he gets separated there. If a lawyer acts poorly, then he can get disbarred. And what we talk about with like the private defense, that if you violate your contract, then you have to deal with the separations that result from not having your contract, or the terms that happen when you do violate the contract. Right. So I think that's a good point, but to separate someone forcefully is a different story. And that's where, like I mentioned earlier, about a criminal still having rights. And I don't know that he loses that right of...
Well, this is what he says. Likewise, a criminal, by the very act of committing a capital crime, separates himself decisively from society. The sentences of exile and life imprisonment are public judgments which are understood to confirm that separation. Capital punishment is the extreme instance of separation. So I guess what he's saying is, by committing a capital crime, you have decisively separated yourself from society. So carrying out the death sentence is just completing that, I guess. Did I misread that?
I don't know, because that's where, like, I like when I finished the article, I got the idea that he was against the death penalty, but that's one of those areas where I'm not sure what he exactly is getting at. But like I agree with the idea, like I've been saying, that
separates himself is important, right?
Right. So I think we have to distinguish between when someone separates themselves and when there's a forced separation. And when I don't think
someone decides to separate you.
Right. And I don't think the latter of those is justified. Like we talked about in our previous episodes, I think it was, what was the episode number? 129, how to deal with criminals in a libertarian society, just linked in the show notes. But we talk about ways that there could be free market alternatives to prison where you are physically separated from society, but you check yourself into that. in order to basically protect yourself or to pay restitution for the crime that you committed. It's not that you get thrown in and locked into a cage. It's an arrangement that's made with your insurance company or whoever's the other party in this agreement to deal with protection services for yourself and your community. So, obviously, killing someone through capital punishment is a forced separation. So, on that, level, it's in line with these other forced separations that are a lot less serious. Just saying that, like, oh, we're going to throw you in a cage. Throwing someone in a cage is less serious than saying we're going to end your life. So, if I'm going to say that you're not justified to lock someone in a cage as forced separation, then clearly you can't say that you can
kill someone.
Right. And also, let's distinguish between because that will be a response. You go, oh, so you can't kill someone in self-defense? Well, that's obviously different. And maybe, I don't know if you had more on separation you want to talk about, but
no, I mean, I was going to, if we continue to read a little bit, he talks about society wanting to express and confirm its abhorrence for certain crimes by the definitive separation of a criminal from society. A clear example would be the execution of the Nuremberg war criminals. These criminals were not merely executed, but also their mortal remains were cremated and the ashes scattered. Why? So that they would in no sense continue to abide as a presence in society. Today, many communities reasonably want to separate serial murderers from themselves in the same way. I think.
Now that I read this again, I'm getting a much different thing, because when I first read that, and maybe this is just the power of approaching someone with a certain expectation, but I thought originally that he was saying that the scattering the ashes and everything
was a bad thing.
Yeah, it was just like excessive. Like, excessive. Why? What's the point of that?
Right.
And it was just a really, like, basically virtue signal that we really don't like these guys.
Yeah. Now, like we were saying, we had different opinions of this, and part of the reason is probably it was sent to me after I had a discussion with someone about the death penalty, in which case I was against it in all circumstances. And so the guy told me to read this. So I came into it thinking that this was a pro-death penalty piece. But the guy does, I mean, the fact that we both read it, and at least initially had different reactions, shows the guy's somewhat reasonable.
Right.
It's not like he's off the handle saying, must kill these bastards.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, where were you going before I interrupted you to bring up that Nuremberg line? Because I think there's a lot to say about the Nuremberg trials. I don't even know a whole lot about it. If it was like the decision makers versus the soldiers, like who were they all on trial?
I don't know that much about it either, but it kind of does tie into what I was saying, because I thought I was tying it into something else, but the Nuremberg trials actually is good because it's about self-defense. And I mean, if you were to, these Nazi soldiers and officers, whoever they were on the Nuremberg trials, while they were in the acts of murdering people, that if one of their victims kind of was able to rise up and defend themselves and kill them, that's probably justified because it's self-defense. Sure. But at this point, I mean, we know, I mean, this has been hashed out. This horse has been beaten to death, that a lot of these Nazis were just doing it because they were just following orders. They're not guys that just like woke up one morning and said,
that was the defense at Nuremberg.
Right. That I'm just gonna go out and murder some Jews. No, they're doing it because they were told to, and that's obviously wrong and very evil, and they should not have done that. But how much of a threat do we think they are at this point? That the war's over, they're not soldiers anymore. I really doubt and you could say that their psychology or something was gravely affected by their experience in the war, and maybe they've become violent people. But I mean, there's you hear stories pop up a lot when you find, oh, this guy was a Nazi soldier and he was a guard and did all this horrible stuff, and he's like 100 years old now. Well, probably the guy wasn't murdering anyone since then.
Yeah, I think there was actually a recent article about some Nazi who was like 94, got arrested in Great Britain, or maybe.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's if you're no longer a threat, like we were saying with the kid with the egg, once it was determined that he's no longer a threat, I mean, the amount of force that you should level against him starts to drop off dramatically.
Right.
Especially in the egg situation. I mean, if he had one egg and you could pretty safely determine that his goal was to break that egg over the senator's head, once the egg was gone, the threat's basically over. So probably don't really need to use force other than maybe to, pay for the dry cleaning that was required for the suit. If you needed that, but I think that's a good transition into vengeance, because I think part of the problem with society, and even among a lot of libertarians, as from what hearing people talk, is that, man, there's just so much bloodlust out there, is that people want revenge and vengeance for things, that it's not enough to just get restitution. They want to see the criminals suffer. And I don't know how that really makes someone whole.
Right. I don't know. Now, I'm not big on vengeance, but in this article, he calls vengeance a virtue.
Yeah, that's
and I think that's because you want to have that drive inside you to fight against evil. If you lose that, you don't have this desire to stop evil, I think, is why they would say vengeance is a virtue.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you do
because if you just walk around, like, let's take your pedophile example from earlier, and this guy is going out abusing children, and you don't do anything because you don't have any vengeance. You can't stop him now, and he just continues to do what he's doing, and you don't have that drive inside you to stop him. I think that's why he would say vengeance is a virtue, because you want to be stopping that evil.
Right. So I guess,
does that make sense or no?
Yeah. So are you implying or not implying that vengeance necessitates violence?
I think that's implied.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I do have that drive in me, but I stop myself from violence for sure. I fight my emotions all the time. Not all the time, but See, vengeance, the habit of soul by which we earnestly wish that offenders receive due punishment, is a virtue, not a vice. I don't know. I don't really go around hoping people get punished.
No, neither do I.
So if that's what vengeance is, maybe I don't feel vengeance. Maybe I just totally got that wrong.
Right.
Because I don't go around hoping people get punished and wanting to see people fail.
Well, that's our whole point, and I think that's what this guy's missing, is that, I mean, the whole point of our previous discussions about how to deal with crime is about restitution. How do we bring about restitution? How do we make a victim as whole as we can?
I don't think it's healthy to go around wishing bad on people.
No, and I think that misses the point of what a crime is. If you're talking about, well, how do we punish this guy, instead of saying, well, how do we
make things better?
How do we make things right? Or not right? I mean,
what this person did, how do we correct do our best to correct it?
Right. Exactly.
And why would you not want to encourage someone to do good?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is the best to get someone to say, all right, well, here's what I owe you for doing this thing. I mean, I think that's
Yeah, and yeah, right. So okay, if that's what he means by vengeance, I don't know that I really feel vengeance that often. I don't look for people because then like what is wrong? I mean, I think I don't know. This is a long article. I'd have to read more to know specifically because, like, for example, if he's talking about the drug war, like, you can argue that doing drugs is not good for your health, certain drugs especially.
right. Yeah, and that's kind of where I get confused in this article because he jumps around. Like, I don't know if he's maybe because it's just my perspective on how I see things. So it's kind of confusing for me when he'll make a point and I think he's arguing in favor of what I think, where he's actually using that as an argument, saying that it's a bad thing.
Yeah, here's another thing, right, that I want to bring up. It might, but okay, he says in just the next line, no one can genuinely possess the cardinal virtue of justice if he lacks the minor, though essential, virtue of vengeance. I'm not sure why that is. I guess vengeance is your drive to get justice. But on top of that, if justice is defined as punishing someone, that puts us in the cycle we're currently in right now with, you know, the West goes in and chops up the Middle East. The Middle East, people in the Middle East respond. And then, like what happened in New Zealand, he cites all these terrorist attacks as the reason he wanted to do what he did. So in his mind, that's justice. Not in my mind.
Right.
But do you think peace would be more important than justice?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the two go hand in hand. I mean, at least from my perspective, what justice is, I think the two go hand in hand.
Like,
but
you think of what happened, right? So to Americans, history started on September 11th, 2001. We were just minding our own business and got attacked by these crazy people. And the reason I say that, you know, somewhat sarcastically, but that is the reality of how people thought. That the U.S. wasn't doing anything and they hate us for our freedom, and so they attacked us. Looking back with hindsight, wouldn't it have been better to just have peace after that?
Right.
Instead of this vengeance, this need for supposed justice, when the reality was no one even understood. I don't want to say no one. A majority of people didn't even understand the situation or what was happening or what was going on throughout the 1990s over in the Middle East. So they were looking at it as we were minding our own business and got attacked and we need justice. And It destroyed an entire section of the world. It displaced millions of people and killed maybe millions. How many? I don't know what the body count is. Some of our own soldiers went over there and died, our own being the U.S. soldiers. For what? We're still there fighting and there's no end in sight.
Right.
Peace certainly would have been a better idea than justice, in my opinion.
Oh, I get to. Yeah.
Do you see what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So no, I agree that peace would be peace is the better alternative.
Like, let's just say, like, even if we just forget the 90s happened and just on that day 9/11 happened, 3,000 people died, horrible, awful tragedy. Is it better to get justice? Is it better to get revenge, or is it better to just have peace? You know, that's oversimplifying it because that's not what happened.
Right. And the argument would be that, well, we have the benefit of hindsight now, and maybe if we did the justice another way. But I mean, at the same time, this is the reason that we're anti-war, is that we can see that every single time it gets done, it ends up poorly.
You piss people off and you ruin lives, countless lives. And, you know, I mean, we could go on and on about it. But if people had an idea of having peace, how does that, I guess it just, you know, it's a deeper conversation that there are people who think the Middle East and people in the Middle East are just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So when they got attacked on 9/11, they didn't stop and think, why would people do this? They thought those people are crazy.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know where I'm getting off the rails.
Yeah. So, kind of scrolling through this article because this is where, man.
Vengeance is the habit of earnestly wishing for and willing due punishment. It follows that anyone who regards punishment as solely remedial by the nature of the case cannot have this virtue. Such a person will indeed appear complacent and passive in the face of grave wrongdoing, because vengeance stirs up anger and incites to action. Our hierarchy has evidently been complacent before evil. When he says our hierarchy, he's referring to the church, the Catholic Church, that they became complacent to evil, that they didn't have that vengeance, and so they allowed it to continue.
Yeah. Sorry, I was reading another line a little bit further down.
Okay.
Because man, I completely misread this the first time around. I think this guy's absolutely calling for
death penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the way you read it, like when I was reading it earlier, I'm like, man, this is a great point. Oh, I love this. This is another great point. So
he does have some good points.
Yeah. So let me read this paragraph, and it's funny because normally I don't like what Pope Francis says, and I think he's been pretty terrible. But and I think this guy's referencing things that Pope Francis has said as a way to criticize the Pope. But every time that he's referenced Pope Francis in this, I've agreed with him with Pope Francis. That is so. Let me read this passage. Pope Francis, in the previously cited letter, even seems to regard retribution as nonsensical. Quote, when the death penalty is applied, people are killed not for current acts of aggression, but for offenses committed in the past. Moreover, it is applied to people whose capacity to cause harm is not current, but has already been neutralized, and who are deprived of their freedom. End quote. Apparently that a punishment should be meted out in order to match an accomplished crime is itself an argument against such punishment. Obviously, punishment is retrospective, administered for crimes committed in the past. Otherwise, murderers who have no reason for killing anyone beside their past victim ought to be released. So I think he just completely missed what Pope Francis was saying there. It's like, all right, a guy has murdered someone and he's in prison. He's not very likely a threat to murder anybody else. So the only way you would be justified in killing someone is self-defense. So this clearly is not a case of self-defense. Mm-hmm. You are being an aggressor at this point by killing this person. You're murdering them. Like Pope Francis is making the case that you're murdering someone with capital punishment. Yes. So, and then he just says, well, it's with that logic, then just because the aggression or crime's not happening at this moment means that they don't deserve anything. And no, that's not the case at all. What we've been saying is that you need to make restitution. You need to make someone whole for what you have done. And over time, and I think this is it's funny because originally it was kind of this eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And people don't like that anymore. And I don't know, I'm not, a historian or theologian about this, but it makes a lot of sense because that's very much like it's a restitution type thing.
Right.
Now, do we need to take that so literally that if someone pokes your eye out, that you get to poke their eye out? No, but by kind of rejecting that idea, then you start to lose how to deal with crimes, and it starts being this thing that a crime is not about the victim, but it's about society. And I think that's where this guy is really starting to get off the rails with it. He's saying like, well, he's already murdered the guy, so why not just release him until, it's unfortunate, man, right, that it's happened that way. So I don't know, that makes sense, that trying to talk about the eye for the eye, that, it's not like, I'm not saying we take that literally, but it means something that is it's very valuable, and it's a shame that that as a society that it's been rejected. Just the basic idea is gone, not just the literal idea there. So, yeah, I don't know how you can justify if you've got even if you think that prison is legitimate, that you've got a guy locked in a prison cell. I don't know how, and he's no longer a threat to anyone. He's secured. He's got no ability to cause. Yeah, why you would ever be justified in killing him at that point? How that wouldn't be murder? Much like what we were saying earlier. Once you realize that this kid who smacked the egg on the guy's head didn't have any more eggs, and that's all he was trying to do. I mean, your justification to continue to use force is basically gone. So, you can apply it up and down the scales of seriousness from throwing an egg at someone all the way to killing someone. It all checks out, and that's the kind of thing that makes me confident in what I think, because it does apply fairly well, consistently and universally across things. So,
yeah.
So I don't know. Do you want to talk about vengeance anymore, or do you want to go on to protection?
Go on to protection, because in protection, all right. Third, protection. Vengeance takes on a combative aspect that is a noticeable trait in a strong father who, precisely because he loves his child, cannot tolerate wrongdoing in him.
Let me jump back up to...
This makes strong fathers also strong protectors. It is obvious that our bishops have failed to be strong fathers in the face of sexual unchastity.
So, I mean, I don't disagree with that. If they're just not doing a good job of dealing with these, priests and they're not protecting their flock, their parishioners, people in their diocese, that, yeah, I mean, they failed at protecting them, but I don't understand how you would say, all right, well, that means that you could kill someone.
Okay, so here's what's interesting. The tradition says that the death penalty may sometimes be necessary to defend society against the aggressor, and in such cases, the state may even have a duty to use it. It is a gross mistake to take this to mean merely that the death penalty is licit only when necessary to keep a murderer from committing further crimes. It is likewise a mistake, though not so crude, to say that the penalty plays a role of a psychological deterrent, as if it were no more than a heavy fine, the most severe dissuasion. No, what is meant is rather that the framework of law as applying proportionate punishment defends society, and that, given this framework, something proportionate to death must be promised for capital crimes. The homeowner's gun may protect him against a night intruder. If he lacks a gun, the promise that the police will soon arrive can play the same role. If the police cannot get there in time, the framework of law plays a comparable role. The promise of proportionate retribution is essential to this order. Be assured that it will be done to you as you wish to do to others. So, is he saying that because you have a gun, you may protect against a night intruder? If you lack a gun, the police will play that same role. They'll come with guns. And if the police don't get there in time, the framework of the law plays a comparable role. So it's like, I could have killed the guy.
Oh, yeah.
If I didn't have a gun, the cops could have came and killed the guy. If the cops don't get there, then the law can kill the guy. Is that what he's saying?
I think so, man. Yeah. Like, the more we go through, I'm glad we're going through this, because the more we go through it, the more I think that this guy's like a crackpot, because that's absurd.
That is absurd. I don't see how that follows. That because I could have killed someone when they were attacking me, that means I can kill them whenever I want.
Right. Like, that's not like when someone does something where you would be justified to use lethal force to defend yourself, you don't get like this. You get to kill that guy coupon,
Right?
that
Like
you can cash in whenever you want.
if I pull a water gun on you that looks like a real gun, but it's just a water gun, and in that split second you think it's real, and you get really scared, and had you had a gun on you, you would have shot me.
Mm-hmm.
Then you find out it's just a water gun. Put it away. Just kidding, Rallo. You don't get to kill me.
Yeah, a week later,
you would have been justified in that moment because you thought it was a gun and you thought I was going to shoot you.
Yeah, a week later, I can show up and say, "Oh, I got a gun now." So bang, 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 bang.
Right. That'll be enough of that joke.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds kind of crazy to me, and I don't see how that. I don't follow his logic there. That protects society, like. So, because what he's saying is the death penalty isn't just to defend society against the aggressor from committing further crimes, and also he says it's not just to play the role of a deterrent. What it's meant is the framework of the law applying proportionate punishment defends society, and that given this framework, something proportionate to death must be promised for capital crimes. But is breaking into someone's house considered a capital crime? I mean, it is in the moment, right? You don't know what that guy has. He's breaking onto your property.
I've never heard someone use this kind of logic, and I think he's just like making it up to suit his.
Unless I'm misreading this, but I did read it word for word.
Right, because I'm pretty sure that that one of the reasons, though not good, for capital punishment is that it's supposed to serve for any kind of judgment, that at least what the state does is that it's supposed to serve as a deterrent. And it never does. I mean, it's terrible because if
murder rates have basically been the same for
right, then we would expect to see a drop in crime if that were successful. But we obviously, I don't think we can attribute tough penalties for that. But especially with like the war on drugs and stuff. But
I don't follow this logic at all. The homeowner's gun may protect him against a night intruder. If he lacks a gun, the promise that the police will soon arrive can play the same role. If the police cannot get there in time, the framework of the law plays a comparable role.
I mean, I get the jump from the homeowners to the police and saying that, like, all right, well, the police are going to show up and hopefully they get there in time. And if there's, and that's what we say is that you can transfer, just taking this even from the libertarian.
Yeah, you can transfer your rights.
Right. You have the right to defend yourself. You can transfer your right to self-defense to another party. So that's fine. That checks out there. But
yeah, the difference with the gun is you're not killing the guy. Let's say you have a gun in your home and someone breaks in and you kill that person. You're not killing them because they broke in. You're killing them because you're defending yourself.
Right. And if a guy breaks in and steals some stuff from you, when he's on trial, he's not there on trial for attempted murder against you, unless he, of course, did try to kill you. But otherwise, he's on trial to figure out if he stole your property, and if he did, that you get restitution for it. Yeah, it's just
he switches it from self-defense to when it's no longer self-defense is when the law comes in.
Right.
And the guy's not there, so it's now no longer self-defense. So the fact that he could have killed the guy in one instance, I don't know. I'm going to have to talk about this a little more.
I'd be interested to hear what he says about it, because that just, I don't even think we need to talk about that point anymore, because it's ridiculous.
It doesn't connect to me. I don't see that at all.
Right. So
then he goes on. We can expect that any bishop who, from his stance against the death penalty, has fully embraced the attitude that punishment is never retributive. Did I say that right? Retributive, but only a deterrent, will fail to protect his flock by appropriately punishing offenders. He will misapply the standard of proof for criminality, moving it from past to future crimes. Indeed, Father N. did, beyond a shadow of a doubt, fondle the genitals of that young man. But unless it can be shown beyond a shadow of a doubt that he will do something like that in the future, then he should not be punished. I don't think I don't know what that's about, because I didn't read that anywhere, and I didn't hear any bishops saying that.
I guess I thought that they just kind of moved him around and kind of tried to give him counseling or something, and say, I don't do that anymore, so that's enough.
Yeah, I'm not saying know that it. Yeah,
right, but I don't know that was because they thought that, well, they don't need to be. I don't know.
I think they didn't want the bad PR.
Exactly. That's what I was.
I don't think there was some kind of like moral. I don't think they were sitting there saying, "Well, as long as he doesn't do it again,
right,
we don't have to punish the guy."
Mm-hmm.
I think this was all. I think they were all cowards, and they were protecting their reputation and, in some instances, their power, and didn't want to expose it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it had any moral justification. I don't think they thought they were doing the right thing.
Right.
I don't think there's a moral justification for it.
Yeah.
Even from the people doing it.
I agree.
I think it was just not good.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's kind of the point of this article, is to say, if you're against the death penalty, is what he's saying, is if you're against the death penalty, and for the reasons he laid out, you start to lose that vengeance, and then you allow these child molesters to be in your realm and allow them to continue doing what they're doing, because you won't take a punishment for, you won't punish them.
Right.
And who knows? Maybe that had played a role. I don't know. I do think they should have been punished. Obviously, I think if you do that, if it's credible, or if there's a pattern of people complaining, like if you get switched around to a parish and then get another complaint, it's like, all right, you got to stop being around these people. I think there should have been some punishment in the sense, like defrocking them,
mm-hmm.
Get them out, expose it, tell people,
right. Yeah, society does not look kindly on pedophiles. So
no, prisons don't look kindly on pedophiles.
Yeah,
nobody wants pedophiles around.
So even if you don't go to prison, but you're exposed as a pedophile,
your life is over.
Yeah, you're not going to have that great of a life after that. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that was kind of the point of his article, was to say, you lose vengeance, then you allow child rapists basically to go around unpunished.
Yeah, I think what it was is maybe when he first had the idea that he tried to tie these two things together, it made a lot of sense. But as he kept trying to go through it, he just had to like start really stretching stuff out to continue it, because it just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. And that's why we go, as typical, go to property rights. So if I have an organization and I'm in charge of that organization, I don't have to let anyone participate in it. And me saying that you're no longer allowed at my house, separating you from my property, is not, to me, I don't see how that's the equivalent of ending someone's life, or just or saying ending someone's life is just separation, in the same way me telling you you're not allowed at my house or part of my organization, just in the extreme. I mean, maybe so, but there's something to the value of life that I would think Catholics would think is important.
Right.
So property rights kind of solve this if if the property owner decides you can no longer participate. Now, if the property owner doesn't, then they're going to have a problem. They're going to have a lot of problems that the church is having.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I think we covered a lot of
our
issues with the death penalty. Yeah. And I think it was good to go through this article, because I think it's, despite thinking that it's crazy at the end, it is, I guess, one of the better, or at least more nuanced arguments in favor of the death penalty that I've seen. So I guess it was a good exercise.
Yeah.
Especially when I thought it was on agreeing with me in the beginning, until I actually read it again. I guess I skimmed through it and read it too quickly.
Well, there's some good points.
Right.
So whatever.
Yeah. So do you have a free market success story for this
I
week?
can have a free market story for this week.
Yeah, go for it.
So this weekend, Saturday morning, I was up early. I went out, got breakfast, came back. It's probably 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I walk into my backyard and see that the spout where we would connect the hose is leaking, and it wasn't just kind of leaking. It was like almost like the valve was half open. It was coming out pretty good. It's a lot of water streaming out of my house that I don't want to pay for. So it was Saturday morning, and I'm thinking I have a plumbing emergency on my hands right now, and knew if I had to call a plumber and get him to my house on the weekend immediately, it would probably cost me a good amount of money. That plumber had other plans. He didn't plan on coming to my place, whether he's doing other jobs or spending time with his family, whatever he was doing.
Probably riding a tractor.
May have been riding a tractor. Probably not, but I mean, that's a possibility. So in order for me to pull him away from his tractor, you're going to have to pay him a lot of money. So I figured way back in the day, I worked for a plumber for a summer. I can fix this thing myself. Went on YouTube, looked at a video to remind myself, did not want to solder. So I went to Home Depot and found these little SharkBite fittings that you don't need to solder. And it was really, really easy to do. And it was cheap. So I didn't have to call the plumber. Why is that a free market success story? Well, it did inconvenience me. I didn't want to go out and do plumbing on a Saturday morning. There was other things I wanted to do. I had to change my plans because of it. So if I really wanted to do those things, I could have called a plumber and someone would have done it. I could have paid someone enough money to do it. It would have been expensive. And that's kind of just how the market works. You know, if I was independently wealthy and had millions of dollars, I probably, maybe I would have done it anyway, but I may have just not cared as much about the money and said, I don't care if it costs me $2,000, come over here now and change it. But given my options, I thought it was best for me to go at it on my own, even though I hadn't done it in years. Worked out fine. I don't have a leak. The spout works. We're good. So
yeah, you were able to value your money, or at least what you anticipated the cost would be, that money over your time.
Correct. So I gave up my time, but I kept my money.
Yep.
I did have to spend some dollars, but not as much.
Right, well, the difference between the cost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess I had nothing important to do on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was nice to do those. Nice to have those options. Of course.
Yeah, like if I had a trip or a business trip or something, if it was the morning and I'm heading out to the airport and I have to go, well, then maybe the plumber would have been more important than missing my flight.
Right.
But I had nothing to do, so I just did it myself.
Well, there you go.
So it's the market working, and that plumber was able to do what he wanted to do that day.
Yes. So, yeah, and I mean, if he wanted to do a lot of plumbing, then he obviously, he lowers his price. But
right, and the other nice thing about the market was I was able to do this relatively. I mean, it wasn't expensive, and there's a hardware store not far from me, so everything I wanted was there.
Excellent. And, I'm happy that you had a leaky pipe or valve so that we could have a free market success story this week.
Yeah. So I'll see what I can break next week.
Yeah, you should. So, all right. Once again, the show notes page for this episode is mcflugel.com/136. We'll have some links to the stuff we talked about in the episode, as well as link to libertymugs.com. Remember, we need $10,000 worth of Bitcoin in about a month to make sure that I don't go to prison. And I'm pretty sure that you'll all go into prison too if I go, because I think you'll be just like tied in with whatever I'm accused of doing. Yeah, so
it's a criminal conspiracy. Anyone who's part of the conspiracy can then any action is attributed to all members.
Right. So make sure you do your part and keep not only me but yourself out of prison.
That's right.
Um,
and when do they need this money by?
I think it was like a month, so like the middle of April.
Okay, so you got some time.
You do have time, so there's really no excuse on anybody's part to not buy a bunch of mugs.
$100 mug.
Yes. And be sure to we should be doing this more often, or asking about it. If you don't mind, leave us a review where you listen to your podcast. It helps us out a lot to help get this podcast out to more people. The more positive,
helps the self-esteem too.
Yes, yeah. I have to talk Slappy off the ledge every night before he goes to bed.
Check the ratings every day.
Yeah, and when he doesn't see any new good ones, it really makes him upset, and we don't want a sad Slappy.
No.
So, again, show notes page, whatever. Show notes page, mcflugal.com/136. Thanks for listening. We will catch you next week.
Peace.